Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. والآكبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وإمام المرسلين سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. اللهم فقهنا في الدين وعلمنا التأويل وجعلنا من خيرة أمة سيدنا محمد عليه أفضل الصلاة وتم التسليم. اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. We seek Allah's protection from knowledge that does not benefit, from a heart that has no khushu, from a nafs that's never had enough, from an eye that does not tear, from a dua that's not heard. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As we have been, when we start off, obviously, just a reminder to everyone and myself and anyone to please remember the people of Palestine in your duas. As time goes on, the idea here is that, like I said, and I've said this so many times, that people will kind of forget. You know what, we've said as much as we could. Let's just carry on with our lives. But you can continue with your lives, but still continue to speak up about it, and kind of call out injustice that's taking place. Okay, so please remember them in your duas. However you can assist. I know there's a lot of charity events, etc., that's taking place to raise money in our local area as well, in Wolverhampton, our local masjid, and some of the guys, mashallah, they're doing a lot of work on it, so may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward them all in this. So we continue with our lesson, Seerah, and today obviously I got a bit delayed, so recording the lesson now at night, here. So it's kind of a different location every time, but it's the bedroom now. Everyone kind of falls asleep at this time, so it's 9 o'clock now. So yeah, I'll probably get some banging on the door and say, keep it quiet. But inshallah, well, there we go. Electricity's gone again. But you probably don't know. It's like a unique system here. Someone was praising us here. No one's got this system. I'm thinking, well, they don't need the system because the electricity doesn't keep going. It's what we call UPS. It's powered by batteries, and you can kind of connect these low voltage bulbs and a fan. So generally speaking, what people tend to do is, in one room, one bulb and a fan is connected to the UPS, or when the electricity does go, you can still, something's still functioning. Okay. Anyway, it is quite cold, so I'm kind of prepared here, wrapped up. I actually got delayed because so the neighbors always come around. We were sitting and the stories weren't finishing, so it's one of those things, you just get delayed. But yeah, mashallah, when you hear some of the stories, obviously from the local, with the added masala, bring that speciality to it. So they were talking about, in I think last lesson I kind of showed you a bit around the area, and I mentioned, look, the back area there is Indian occupied Kashmir, but actually this side where I said that, remember when that plane was shot down, the Indian pilot was captured, that was just on kind of just over that mountain there, hill, whatever you want to call it. And actually the border is a lot closer on that side. If you go up to the kind of hills here at night, you can see they've kind of lit up the border with all these lights. Obviously the electricity is coming a lot better there than here. It doesn't even reach the minimum. Is it 220? It's 220, 270. I think it's 220. What do you need? But anyway, that's for another day. But yeah, so they're coming out with all these stories about, this is what happened, and this is what happened, and the buildings were shaking, and yeah, you get that extra information from them. But yeah, it's just not, like I said, the border's not really too far from here. We say border, but line of control before someone starts. I'm definitely going to not be able to please everyone, but from my side, yeah, the point is line of control. Okay. Anyway, moving on then. Enough of the kind of the regional politics, etc. So we last week we've been talking about after Khyber and things after Khyber, etc. Last week we spoke about a very important figure, Sayyidina Abu Huraira. Okay, and as we move along now, kind of a year goes by after the events of Hudaybiyah. Okay, so the year kind of moves along. It comes to the time. It comes to Zulqa'dah. Okay, the 7th year of the Hijrah, and the Muslims, in terms and according to the terms of the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, go to perform the Umrah. So make sure everything's fine. Yeah. Okay, so they go to perform the Umrah. Okay, so the Prophet ﷺ leaves Sayyidina Abu Dhar al-Ghifari in charge of Medina before departing. Okay, Sayyidina Abu Dhar, remember, was a highway robber. We spoke briefly about him, from the clan of Ghifar. Okay, so he embraced Islam during the early Meccan period and took Islam back to his people. Okay, so now the Umrah they are to perform is the Umrah that was aborted last year, and this is known as Umratul Qada, the Qada Umrah. Like the Qada prayer. It's called the Qada because when they set out the first time, they had to abort it. Okay, so now they are making up for it, if you like. Okay, now a few of the names because because it had led to the agreement, it was called Qadiyah. Okay, it was also called Qisas because it was to take the place of the Umrah that they could not perform. And finally, there was one that, because it had led to peace, it was called Sulh. Okay, so these are a few of the names that mentioned on this Umrah. Okay, we'll go with the Umrah al-Qada because it's a common term that everyone's familiar with. Okay, so the participants of the Bayatul Ridwan that we've spoken in detail about, the blessed pledge beneath the tree was kind of summoned, 1,500 of them. Well, those that are still alive. Okay, so 1,500 of them, and then in addition to that, so the total number was 2,000 Muslims. Okay, in kind of pilgrim Ka'ab, armed only with the kind of shield swords, make the journey to Mecca as per the agreement. Okay, Sayyidina Abu Huraira was put in charge of the sacrificial camels. Okay, like I said, we spoke about him last week, so I won't mention anything more about him. There was Abdullah ibn Rawaha was in charge of leading the Prophet ﷺ and the camel, leading the Prophet ﷺ camel and 2,000 pilgrims into the sacred prison. Now, Abdullah ibn Rawaha was the Sahaba who first stood up to Abdullah ibn Ubay when he kind of demeaned the Prophet ﷺ, shortly after the Hijrah. He was also one of the first to kind of march out to duel the Makkah al-Badr. Okay. Now there are some narrations that weapons, were kept kind of separate in a different location. Okay. So the idea here was obviously the Prophet ﷺ was always prepared. Okay. For every kind of outcome. So on a separate location, certain Sahaba were kind of guarding, or they were there with the weapons, okay, just in case that the Quraysh decide to attack them, just in case they decide to break the treaty, so the Prophet ﷺ was prepared for this, okay. Now, it was just a case of so they can easily reach those weapons. Now, this kind of information, or, the word kind of spreads, Quraysh and Makkah, that, the Muslims have come, and they're going to break the treaty, they've come with weapons to fight us. Okay, so what happens is that the Quraysh, they form a delegation. A delegation is formed when when this news reaches them. Okay, so they go to the Prophet ﷺ and say, look, you've always told the truth. Okay, you've always told the truth, even as a child. Are you coming to attack us? And the Prophet ﷺ said that I'm not coming to attack you. Okay, so they're kind of relieved. Oh, okay, because the Prophet ﷺ always speaks the truth. Okay, the Prophet ﷺ always speaks the truth, and they all knew this. And we've got so many examples of this. Okay, we got so many examples of this. How the non-Muslims, they knew the Prophet ﷺ would always speak the truth. Anyway, so what happens is that at one point, actually, as they were making the journey, at one point, some of the, and again, this is one of the narrations that is mentioned, that at one point some of the companions were kind of struggling. You know, they're struggling and, you know, whatnot, they're feeling weak. And they request the Prophet ﷺ, oh, if you allow us to slaughter some of the camels, so the camels that are being bought for the sacrifice for Umrah, that, you know, lesser pilgrimage, if you allow us to slaughter some of them, and so we can have the meat and we can drink the soup, you know, that will give us strength. Okay, there were around about 60 camels. Okay, but the Prophet ﷺ forbade them. Okay, what he said instead was he kind of laid out a cloth, and everyone piled up food. Everyone kind of piled up the food that they had, well, whatever little they had. You just kind of bring all the food together, so you get this little kind of hill formed. Okay, so this pile kind of forms, and the Prophet ﷺ says to everyone, come and eat. And again, it's another miracle, because they continue to eat, all 2,000 continue to eat, but the pile does not reduce. Okay, the pile does not reduce. Anyway, so moving on then, as per the agreement, the Meccans kind of vacate Mecca. Okay, that was the agreement, that we'll vacate Mecca for 3 days. Okay, and then you kind of, you do whatever you want to do. So they vacate Mecca, and kind of Mecca is empty. It's kind of emptied out of its people. The Muslims enter, and they're kind of seen by the Arabian tribes, you know, coming in. You know, just subhanallah, imagine this. I mean, like I said, it'll be so much more when it comes to the conquest of Mecca, but when we reach that, but just imagine now then, they've cleared the way, and this is 2,000 pilgrims coming, dressed all the same in the pilgrim, you know, like white cloth, 2 white sheets, that's it. Okay, so imagine that the Arabian tribes coming, you know, in kind of pilgrim pride, as they you know, they had been, you know, they had been prevented the year before, but here they are coming in full pilgrim garb. You know, a lot of the Quraysh are watching from the hill. So what actually they do is, right, what they decide is they kind of clear out Mecca. They all go to the mountains, the hills, kind of, you know, pull out your deck chair and sit down, and let's see what they're going to do, you know, and they're all watching from there as the Muslims come in to enter the Haram. Okay, so it might, like I said, I've said this maybe not as much recently, but I've always said it, like, put yourself in that situation. If you want to truly appreciate the Seerah, put yourself in that situation. Okay, the Muslim army entry, well, the Muslims, not armies, like the Muslims have come for pilgrimage. Okay, for Umrah, they're entering the Haram. Okay, all 2,000 dressed up how they are. All, you know, everyone's equal. They're all dressed the same. Everyone's equal. Okay, and so you got all these, the Quraysh, the Meccans kind of watching from the hilltops. Actually, in the Sultan of Hearts, actually, there's a bit of a description here. I'll just read this out. Puts it across quite nicely. Okay, so it was the 4th day of the month of Dhul Hijjah. With the first light of morning, the blessed messenger had started from the place called Mara Zahran, and now was entering Mecca. After many years, the Kaaba would meet its twin for the first time. It was now returning to this place. He Sallallahu was now returning to this place he had left 7 years ago, having made an agreement with its people. The sacrificial animals were going in front, and he was following them from behind towards the Kaaba. When they came to the place called Zituwa, the sounds of takbir rose, and they continued to recite the talbiyah as well. The people of Mecca were going to learn how to respect the Kaaba from the Messenger of Allah. Okay, so not their kind of routines or, you know, the way they do. This is how you respect the Kaaba. Okay, the people of Mecca were going to learn how to respect the Kaaba from the Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Abdullah ibn Rawaha held the reins of Qaswa, and was walking in front of our noble Prophet, reciting poems that spoke about the changes in circumstance from yesterday to today. Sayyidina Umar found this strange and warned him as to the appropriateness of his behavior. It's a case of like, don't stir up trouble or whatnot. Why are you mentioning all this? However, the Prophet ﷺ intervened. I hear it too. Okay, I hear it too, O Umar. Do not stop him, asking him to leave Abdullah ibn Rawah alone. The word had its own power, and the blessed messenger pointed and said, Let it be, O Umar. It, as in speech, is more effective than piercing of an arrow. Then he turned to Abdullah and told him to say the following as they entered Mecca. He is Allah the Almighty. There is no deity but He. He grants His subject victory. He makes His army triumph and destroys the masses that stand in front of Him. From then on, Abdullah ibn Rawah was repeating these words that he had learned from the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, and the companions who heard him repeated what he was saying as well. Mecca, which was in the mourning for so many years, was now enjoying the happiness like day of festivity. The Muhajirun were the ones who rejoiced most. Now imagine this, the Muhajirun, they're coming after so long, just like the Prophet ﷺ, 7 years, for some of them. They've been so, well, actually, for some even more. So, Abyssinian, the ones who went on the first, just Abyssinia. So what is it, 12 years? So, just imagine after so long, they're coming back home. So there was a memory awaiting them at every corner of Mecca. The children of the sons of Hashim surrounded the blessed messenger and were displaying shows of emotion. They then came to the Kaaba and met with our noble Prophet at the same location. The mihrab and the mimbar had reunited once again. In case they would do some harm to him, the honourable companions had formed a wall of flesh around him, protecting him all the way. They were going to stay there for 3 days according to the agreement, and they were going to direct themselves to Allah the Almighty the whole time. Okay, so just give a bit of an explanation here. Okay, so that's fine. There's a bit of a description there. Anyway, so what happens here? You see, when they come and they've all entered. So the Prophet ﷺ tells them to march straight to the Kaaba. So here what you see is some of the sunnah of the tawaf being instituted. Okay, so the Prophet ﷺ, although they have made a long journey, he tells them to head straight to, not to make camp, but rather head straight for the Kaaba. Okay, so they reach the Kaaba and the Prophet ﷺ, kind of shows them. He says to them, "Look, show them your strength." And again here, look, this is the beauty of the Seerah, is that certain things that you do, you learn about it. Okay, this is when it was done. This is the reason it was done. The background, etc. So for those who have been on Umrah or Hajj, when you do tawaf, there's certain things you do. Okay, so the Prophet ﷺ wanted his companions to show them their strength. Most of them come on, when we were coming, they were complaining, we're so weak, can we sacrifice an animal, and let's eat the camel, etc. And then they had some food. But look at them now, the Prophet ﷺ saying, show your strength. So what he does is actually, and conveniently, I've got a cloak on at the moment. So what he does is he uncovers his right shoulder. Okay, so we do this, when you're doing tawaf, basically you uncover, especially for the first 3 rounds, you uncover your right shoulder and kind of you takes this back all the way around and brings it like this. Okay, I'm going to get up, I've got a mic on, it's going to mess everything up. But anyway, he uncovers his right shoulder. Okay, he uncovers his right shoulder, so he kind of sweeps up the upper garment here, so the right shoulder is uncovered. Okay, and all the believers do the same, and they perform what's called Ramal around the Kaaba. Now 3 circuits of the Kaaba they perform at you could say half run, but it's not really a half run. They perform, you've got this, when our teacher was giving us, talking about this, he spoke about when you go for Umrah or for Hajj, if you ever come across the Nigerians doing tawaf, and they're kind of big guys, they're kind of big strapping guys, there's like 6-footers, okay? When they go around, they march. Okay, they go around and they go around fast. They go around like, they're marching, and you got to kind of get out of their way. When you hear that, although in Makkah it's kind of all tile, everything is marble, but you can still hear them, kind of floor shaking when they're coming along, and you just need to get out the way. Don't get in front of them. Marching, the presence basically is felt. And I was just telling a story about one of his friends. He was with his wife and his son, and there's this old lady, 70 years old, young lady, and she's just coming around, and she's like, whoever's coming in her way, she's kind of charging into and pushing him out the way. It was like a domino effect. He got hit, and he got pushed and pushed his wife and his son. It's like that, and she's giving him looks like, what you doing? Get out my way. But anyway, the point here is what we kind of do. What we're doing here is Ramal is when we're following the Sunnah, and again, because there's so many people now, it probably is advisable not to do it. Okay, it's probably advisable not to do it because there's so many people anyway. But the idea here is what you're doing is the Prophet wanted them to show their strength. Okay, people actually misunderstand what Ramal is. Okay, and it's not about running fast. Okay, and dodging people. I see whenever you go to Umrah, whenever you're doing Tawaf, you kind of see, unfortunately, you kind of see, well, one is basically individually you're going around. Okay, that's a different thing. But what sometimes you see is probably an old man or a man, and he's holding his wife, and the Ramal is for the men, okay, not for the women. But he's kind of going around. So what he does is basically he obviously doesn't want to kind of separate with his wife, so he's holding her hand, and he's there kind of dodging around, and she's having to kind of keep up with him as well. That's not the idea. The idea here is that you're marching like a soldier, chest out, broad shoulders, etc. The Prophet ﷺ said, he goes, he wanted them to show their kind of the right shoulder, this upper part of their arm, kind of show your kind of strength, your muscles, etc. Show them, because they're all looking from the hills, they're all looking from the mountain at the top. I still remember, subhanAllah, I still remember that, it's as it was yesterday, that feeling, when I went on Hajj 10 years ago now, okay, and I was doing my Tawaf for Umrah, so on your arrival, obviously, the first thing you do is Umrah. So I'm doing my Tawaf for Umrah, and I can, I imagined, the mountain, the people, because I'd obviously read up on this beforehand, and this Ramal, etc., and how it came about. But I was doing it, and I was walking, and you're walking like, like a soldier. Normally when we walk, it's head down, like this, But here you're kind of walking chest out, and you can just like imagine it. I had it in my mind. That you got mountains around, and you got the Quraysh looking at you. And this is how I'm doing my Tawaf, to show them the strength. And subhanAllah, it was an amazing experience. I can still, that's something that kind of stuck in my head, and it has continually. It's like I said, it's like I was doing it yesterday. So these kind of things, like these little things in the Seerah, that when you learn about it, then kind of when you're doing it, when you're replicating, you're implementing it, you're going about it, you're copying the Sunnah, it turns that experience, it becomes so much more realistic. Okay, but so this was it. It was to show those watching on the hills, to show them, look, the idea here is that don't mess with us. You could potentially be fighting us soon. If they'd come along. So when you have this thing of like, we said like these poets, they would kind of destroy the morale of an army beforehand with their words. Now it could have been the case of the Quraysh have been hearing all this about the Muslims. Oh, they're so strong, and there's this and there's this, and we just don't want to mess around with them. Yet now they're going to see them. They're set up. They're watching them. They're watching their every move. You're going to come in all dragged away, tired, and just dragging your feet, and just about do the Tawaf and etc. It's going to increase the morale of the Quraysh. they're going to think, well, wait a minute, we're getting scared for no reason. Look at them. We can take them. No problem, we can take them. But now when they see them, marching like soldiers already, 2,000 people, okay? 2,000 people. Just imagine that, 2,000 people going around this is how you do ibadah. Okay, this is how you go around the Kaaba. Okay, this is how you do the tawaf. Okay, they'll be shaking. Well, we don't want to mess with these guys. Okay, we don't want to mess with these guys. Okay. And again, like I said, they know that the Quraysh are going to be seeing people that very well they'll be fighting in a few years' time. Okay, so the Prophet ﷺ makes a point of saying, look, show them this is like other, your upper arm. Show them your strength. Show them your vigor. Show them your kind of zeal. Okay, so they go and they march around the Kaaba. 2,000 of them. Remember, the Meccans remember how they used to make tawaf in nude. Okay, and here, what do you see? You see a sea of white. Okay, a sea of white surrounding the Kaaba and going around in at pace. Okay, with vigor and strength here, and this kind of impresses the Meccans. They're like, well, who are these people? What's going on here? We've never experienced something like that. It's like now it's become more common, but previously they would not show on TV, the West media, etc. They would not show live images of people doing tawaf. They would talk about Hajj, etc., but they would not show live images of people doing tawaf because it sends a real strong message. Okay, it sends a real strong message. Okay? I mean, when you're there, subhanAllah, it's just a different experience. But even watching it on TV, it's amazing. Okay, so remember here, a lot of this is about the interaction. Okay, the interaction between the Quraysh and the believers. So they make the tawaf. The Prophet ﷺ goes riding. Okay, he rides around so that people can see what he's doing. Every time he comes to Hajar Aswad, the black stone, he takes his stick and he touches it. He touches the Hajar Aswad with his staff, and he makes the istilam, the greeting of the Hajar Aswad. And he goes around, and the tawaf is made, and the Muslims have, Makkah for 3 days. The whole Makkah for 3 days, and kind of these are the terms of the treaty. Okay. Now, while they were there, the Quraysh were kind of humbled by this, by the entry of this person. Remember, this is the first time that Prophet ﷺ and the Muhajir have seen Makkah in kind of 7 years, and like I said, some even longer than that. So the first time they have gone back home, the first time they have gone to the Kaaba, and look how they are coming back. Okay, how did they leave? Persecuted, chased, exiled, running. Some of them with the clothes on their back, leaving all their wealth behind. How are they returning? With strength, with the dignity, with honor. Okay. Now there was no one in Makkah but them, but everyone is still watching. They've got an audience. Everyone is watching. The Quraysh humble this person that they had driven out. These people they had driven out have now returned, and they're kind of seeing people from different places. Where have these people come from? Yeah, some of them are seeing that that person is from that tribe. Oh, are they Muslim too? So they're from this tribe in far north and etc. Have they become Muslim as well? So they're seeing all this. Okay, this is dawah as well. Okay, so this is big. Now this is big, and the Quraysh at that point now they realize their mistake. They realize their mistake in signing Hudaybiyah. Okay, they should have just let the Prophet ﷺ do his Umrah and go. Don't make any noise about it. Just do your Umrah, off you go. But now what's happened? It became a thing. Everyone knew they're going to come back next year. That's what the agreement was. Now it's become a thing. Now the word's gone around. They're all expecting the Muslims to come. Yeah, someone who wants to know something about the Muslims, all they need to do is just purge themselves on a seat on top of the mountain, by the mountain surrounding Makkah, and sit down and watch the show. The word was out there. They knew now. Now it's become a thing. Now they've got an audience. Whereas previously, just let them in, do whatever you want, off you go. So the Quraysh realized what a mistake they made. So they thought that they were victorious then, but it wasn't. The victory was for the Muslims. So So the Muslims are kind of returning in this splendid perform, the Umrah. They do the say, Hirash cuts the hair as he did before. He cuts the hair of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And again, they all fight for the strands of the hair of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And after the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says to Sayyidina Bilal, who climb on top of the Kaaba and call the Adhan. Okay, climb on top of the Kaaba and call the Adhan. Now, this was something that, well, first of all, look at it in terms of for Sayyidina Bilal, from beneath a rock to atop the house, Now look at what a narrative that is. Okay, starts off being tortured by rocks placed on his chest. Where does he end up? Standing on top of the Kaaba. 20 years later, he's standing on top of the Kaaba, and he's calling the he's calling the Adhan. Okay, it's reciting for the first time. See, this is the first time that the Makkans and all this, they're experiencing the Adhan. Sayyidina Bilal called, giving the Adhan, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Okay, calling out, hey, come to prayers. That's for the Muslims. Come to salvation. That's for the Quraysh. Come to salvation. So you can just imagine how. Again, subhanallah, it's such a beautiful experience there, in front of the Prophet ﷺ, standing on top of the Kaaba, calling out the Adhan. Okay, everyone is hearing there. You've got the people watching. You got who you wanted to watch, they're watching. You got the Muslims there as well. Okay, now the Quraysh were actually offended. Actually, they were offended by this. Remember, saying that Bilal was a slave of Umayyah ibn Khalaf, who was killed at Badr, and in the Meccan idolatrous society, which is extremely class conscious, the fact that a former slave could rise on top of the Kaaba, where the Quraysh put their idols, was something they could not accept. Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl said, God has certainly been kind to my father by causing him to die before he could hear this slave saying such words. Right, that's what Ikrimah says. So yes, subhanAllah, that experience, that events, and how events were unfolding. They were able to do everything. I mean, there's one narration that the Prophet ﷺ wanted to actually enter the Kaaba, but the door was locked, and he sent someone to try to get the keys, but the Quraysh refused, saying that wasn't part of the agreement. You're not allowed to enter the Kaaba. So it was just left at that. So the Muslims kind of camp in the Haram for 3 days. So so a lot of the Sahaba go back, a lot of the Muhajirs go back to their homes. They see what's become of their homes and so forth. But but the Prophet ﷺ kind of camps in the Haram there itself. And kind of many people come to visit him. Sayyidina Abbas radhiyallahu anhu and Fadl, Sayyidina Abbas' wife. The slayer of, let's not forget, the slayer of Abu Lahab. All right, the person who killed Abu Lahab. The story. She comes. Those two come, and she's actually been Muslim from the very beginning. Remember, she's been a Muslim, one of the very earliest Muslims. According to some, she was the second woman to become Muslim after Sayyidina Khadija radhiyallahu anha. Okay, so she's basically like the sister-in-law of the Prophet ﷺ, right? If you look at Sayyidina Abbas were, and the Prophet ﷺ were like brothers, she was his wife. So they come openly and they visit the Prophet ﷺ, and the Quraysh, like I said, they come to regret this kind of victory, which comes of Hudaybiyah. And the reason why I'm mentioning Sayyidina Abbas is actually, and it'll be probably next week I'll mention it actually, because we have some further events that we need to discuss about it. But one of the other people who was watching from the mountaintop was Sayyidina Khalid ibn Walid, okay, who was not Muslim at this point. Khalid had been he'd been having doubts, okay, and he's been having doubts for a long time now. He's been having doubts since the victory of Ahzab, since the Muslim victory at the Battle of the Trench. when he said at the end of the battle, when all the army, when everyone kind of effectively they kind of gave up and said, look at them, well, we've had enough now, let's go, forget all this, we can't hack it anymore. And he said it then, is there any doubt now? Also, is there any doubt left that he's the messenger of Allah? Okay, he said it then. Remember we mentioned that. So he was the one sent out, remember, to intercept the Muslims when they first made the journey for Umrah, okay, a year ago. And they had eluded him. And he said, how did they manage to elude me of all people? Okay, remember he was considered one of the top kind of army generals. Okay, so how did they manage to slip past me? So he's been having these doubts now. Okay, so when he sees the Muslims performing the Umrah, he says, you know what, that's it. Well, what's actually been happening, his brother had already become Muslim, and his brother had already gone, and his brother had kind of passed away. He had become ill and he passed away, but he used to write letters to Khalid ibn Walid, and he said, look, Khalid, the Prophet ﷺ was asking about you. Khalid, the Prophet ﷺ asked me, how can a man so intelligent as your brother not have seen the light? And he would write, yeah, Khalid, when is it you're going to see the light? What we'll do, inshallah, we leave it at there, because next week then actually I want to kind of say that Khalid is one of those when he converts, so we'll speak about that, whether that's next week or the week after. But we'll kind of stop at that point. It's a reasonable point to stop. Nearly enough. Time's up basically. Slightly short lesson today, but I think the kind of topic that we wanted to cover, that's covered. I don't want to jump into a new topic and then try to rush it. So we leave that till next week, inshallah. So hopefully that's been beneficial for everyone. But we leave it at that. Wa sallallahu sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sallam alayhi. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Wa salamun alal mursalin. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.